All right, let's take a look at the proxy design pattern. So this is a structural design pattern. As the name implies, it is basically a surrogate or a placeholder for another object to control access to it. So we can use it to provide additional functionality or control access to an object without modifying the original object. So we'll be looking at an OCR service that will be protected using a proxy. All right, so we'll use the proxy to protect an OCR service and restrict access to the service to only paid account users. So if there's a free user, they can send only a fixed number of requests to that service, right? So we'll add a rate limiter, limiting access to the service only to a number of fixed requests. So the requirements and tools for this lab is we need to use Tesseract. This is an open source OCR engine. So if you're on Windows, you click on the download link. If you are on Mac OS, you can do it using Homebrew or Mac ports. So you download any of these and then you run these commands, right? Or if you're on Linux, you can use apt if you're on Ubuntu, right? You may need to download the Arabic dataset because we will be working on images that contain Arabic text. If you're on Windows, you don't need to download it, but if you're on Mac or Linux, you need to download it, right? So if we are on Windows, we'll click on this link. And you don't need to download the Arabic test dataset. So just download that binary and then install Tesseract, the OCR engine. So go to additional languages and select Arabic. And then finish the installation wizard. So just take a note of where you installed that one because you need to specify the location in your code. So I put that into C Windows, C program file Tesseract, I believe. So let's look at the problem. So we will be building OCR engine that takes a scanned image file that contains text, process it and performs OCR, optical character recognition, and then return text. So let's you can grab the source code by clicking on the links, the starter code. But before that, let's just get an understanding of the problem. So the problem is basically we wanna protect an OCR service. So this is basically a developer who's working on OCR service that extracts text from images. And then she implemented the OCR service using Tesseract. It got very popular. The work that she did, the service was well received, but again, spammers and abusers have increased the request, and she wants to protect it by implementing a rate limiter, right? So we want to implement a rate limiter that would restrict non-paid users to a fixed number of requests per day. All right, so this is a pretty good case pretty good use case for the proxy design pattern. So she wants to keep the implementation for the OCR engine However, she wants to protect it using a proxy, right? So instead of using the actual real OCR service, she would use the proxy OCR service to restrict the number of requests made to the library, right? So we're gonna have a fairly simple program that consists of an interface for our OCR service. Again, we program to an interface, not an implementation. So it takes the image path and then language, and then could throw an exception if any error occurs while we're trying to perform OCR. So we got the real OCR service that will implement the OCR service, and then it takes a path to the data path of tcract. This is where you install tcract, and then we will initialize, create or instantiate an object of tcract, and then we set the data path there. This is the method that does the OCR. So recognize text will take the path to the image, and then the language that we want to extract text for. And then it could throw an exception if anything bad happens. All right. So we create a file object from that image path, and then we set the language for tcract, and then we call the do OCR of the tc4j library. So this is the OCR service proxy that we want to implement. And again, the question is, we want to complete this. We want to protect the real OCR service by implementing a rate limiter in the OCR service proxy, right? So this should fork the repository under our organization. So let's go ahead and clone this repo. And then we will open it in our IDE, right? So I'm going to open it up in IntelliJ IDEA. So let's take a look at the pom.xml file. So 1.8, Java 1.8 is the minimum required JDK. And now it's downloading all the dependencies for our project. Let's take a look at those dependencies. So tc4j, this is for tcract, and it's just logging libraries that tc4j is using, and then JUnit for our testing. All right. So let's take a look at the source code. So we got a source project under main Java and in the package, and also we got some resources, images under resources. These are the images that contain Arabic text that we need to extract the text from these images. So just some articles that I got from Wikipedia that we will be using as an example to extract text from. All right, so let's take a look. This is the OCR service, the interface that contains our specifications. So recognize text, takes an image path, and then a language, and then it could throw an exception if an error occurs. All right, so this is the real OCR service. This is the actual implementation for the recognized text and the OCR service. So we take a data path. This is where did the installation for the tcract engine. and we initialize it. We set the data path, and then we override the recognize text method. So it takes an image path and string language, and then throw an exception if an error occurs. We'll check if the image path and language are null, then we return, print out an error, create a file from the image path, and then we set the language for tcract to the target language, the given language, and then we perform OCR, and the OCR would return a text or a string for the text that was extracted from the image, right? It could also throw an exception, so that's why I had to put that throws exception in the signature, right? So let's go ahead and implement the proxy. So here we need to implement the OCR service interface that will require to override the recognized text. So we can use our IDE to generate or complete that implementation. But before that, we need to do some work on implementing the rate limiter service. So we going to use the real OCR service to delegate the OCR process so that we can convert the image into text by delegating to that service. We also need a key. So assuming that the clients will send a key to use this service, and we'll check if that key is paid or free. Just for simplicity, we're just gonna use a key. We also need to declare a maximum number of requests. So let's say that free accounts can only make 3 requests, right? Don't give them more. So the maximum request, this is for just the free account. A free account can send, so that is the maximum request, right? So that's just the final integer max requests. We also need basically a map that will be implemented as a hash map that contains the key and then the number of requests that was made on that key. All right, so just this is needed to keep track of how many requests were made under that key. All right, so now we need to implement our constructor. So the constructor will take and basically a string data path to the installation path of OCR engine, the tcract, and then the key. So we initialize those. So we create the real OCR service. Remember, it requires the data path to which we install that tcract engine. We initialize the key, the given key, and we also want to create this data structure that keeps track of the requests that were made under each key. So we made that as a hash map. Now we can go ahead and implement the recognize text method. So in this method, the first thing we want to do is we want to check how many requests were basically made for accounts on the free trial plan. Right, so you're gonna check how many requests were made under that key because they will specify the key. So we're gonna get that from our hash map that we call request counts. I'm gonna call the get or default. So if there was something recorded for that key, we'll get the value. Otherwise, we'll get the default 1. 1 means just the first request that they made when they called this method. Right, so we check if that request is allowed. That means it is basically less than or equal to the maximum requests that they can make. So in our case, it's only 3. So we want to check if that is within that range, then we will increment the request count and then store it or update our map, the request counts. Alright, so we will call put to update it. So basically we're just gonna increment it, right? So for that key. So this dot key and then request count +1. And then we will call the real OCR service and perform OCR on the given image. Alright, so just check the number of requests they made, and then we increment our data structure, our map that is keeping tracking of those, and then we delegate to the real OCR service by calling the recognized text, giving it the image path and then the language that they wanna get text for. Alright, so this is looking nice. Otherwise, if they exceeded the request, we want to throw an exception. And in the exception, just give them a message that you have sent just too many requests. And then we can ask them to sign up for an account if they want to send more requests, right? So to send more requests, we're gonna say please create an account and just select paid plan. Alright, so that's will do this rate limiter feature to our OCR service. So instead of using the real OCR service, the clients will be using this OCR service proxy. The proxy is only checking for the rate limits and then delegating to the real OCR service. All right, so let's take a look at the main class. So here we declare the paths to the Tesseract installation. Here we've got a get images method. This method will return the images that are stored under resources images. So these are the images. We want to get the absolute path to these images. So we grab that directory and then we loop through it to get all the files, and it's assuming that these are all images. So get that as an array of images, and here we have a configuration file, so be sure to use the one that you for the operating system that you are on. So we've got one for Mac if you install Tesseract using Homebrew or Mac ports or Windows. So if you're on Windows, then you should use this one. Keep this one data path on Windows. I am not on Windows here. I will do the example on Windows when this is done. So I'm gonna change this one to data paths on Mac, right? Since I'm using Mac. And then here we loop through these images, and then we call the OCR library that is our proxy to convert that. So let's just change this one. I have installed this using Mac ports, so I'm gonna change this into Mac ports. Oops, so here I got an error that the library was not found. So if you go to the README file, this is only for macOS. You need to add the native library to the jar file. So you need to run these commands only if you are on Mac and you run into this error, right? So I ran these commands and then I changed that to Mac ports because I used Mac ports, and now we're able to see the text from these images, and we only got 3 requests processed. any request after that resulted in an exception. So the fourth request, so the first one said process that image, the second one also processed that. This is the first image. We got marhaba here, and the second one we got also the text pretty much close to what is in the image, with just minor mistakes. All right, so pretty good accuracy here for this image. And recognition service, it did the 3 images, so that is the third image. And then for the fourth one, the rate limiter denied the request because we have exceeded the number of allowed requests, and then resulted in an exception. All right, so let's take a look at the test and run that test. So the test will check for the implementation, if it's correctly done as per the proxy design pattern. So we would test the interface, making sure that it's declared correctly. And here we'll test the real OCR service, the structure of it, making sure that we have the correct constructor, correct methods for both the real OCR and the proxy service. And this test is commented out because it relies on the use of the path to the Tesseract engine. You can edit that if you want, but let's just give it a run. We got all the green check marks, that's good. We can also run the test on Maven. So all of these 3 unit test cases are passing now, so we can also run that test in Maven, because this is what will be run when you push your code to GitHub. All right, so double click on that test. And just give it a few seconds. And done. So we got 3 cases passing, no failure. Good. So now we can go ahead and push the code to GitHub. So I made changes to these 2 files, the main app.java and then the OCR service proxy, the implementation. So I'm just gonna add both of them. They're ready, they're staged. Now we can commit them. Just gonna say completed lab 8 and then push to GitHub. All right, so let's take a look at the build. So reload this to see the GitHub action kicking in. Click on details. So if we scroll all the way down to the points, we can see that it is all tests passed, and we got 100 out of 100. All right, so here I'm just gonna test that it's working on Windows. So I use the path C program files Tesseract OCR / test data, and then I'm gonna give it a run here in IntelliJ IDEA. Good, so now it's processing that, and then the fourth one resulted in an exception. All right, great. So that's how you implement the proxy design pattern for this OCR service. Thank you.